Hello friends, and welcome to this week's Peloton video, which is my review of week 2 of doing the Discover Your Power Zones program. I will link down below as well as up here, I think, the first video in this series, my first week doing the Power Zone program. It explains a little bit more about like my hesitancy at first and how I was feeling going in, and also the FTP test that I did. So if you haven't watched that, maybe watch that first. And let's talk about week 2. Week 2 has 4 classes in it. So 4 days of exercise, and you can probably tell from the thumbnail of this video, if I'm gonna title it what I think I'm gonna title it, don't do what I did. So this last week, the start of the week, I had a lot going on. I was not in like a great headspace, and basically in 4 days per week of exercise, you have 3 rest days and 4 bike days. And what I should have done was space those out properly in the way that they recommend in the program. What I did was didn't do any of the classes for 3 days, and then spent the next 4 days doing them back to back. It is not ideal. I mean, it's part of having the program set up the way that it is, in that once you get to the end of the week, it shuts down and then you can't access those classes again. Now, I know I could go back and do, like find them on demand and do it that way. And honestly, if I wasn't making these videos, I may have done it that way. But at the same time, it does motivate me to keep me going because, you know, in other circumstances, if I had missed 3 days, I might just say like, maybe I won't bother. So this was just a very good reminder for me to do the classes as they are laid out. So basically for week 3, the last day is supposed to be a rest day, but I'm going to be taking tomorrow as a rest day, the first day of the week, and then still spacing the classes out from there. So it should all work out fine. Just don't do what I did. And whenever I say that, does anybody else remember the Simpsons episode when Bart joined like whatever their version of the Boys, the Campfire Scouts, was that it? And he got a book about knife safety that was like, don't do what Donnie Don't does. That's what I'm saying here. Don't do what I did. Space the classes out properly with the rest days. So having said that, let's get into my thoughts on the 4 classes that I did. The first one was a half-hour class with Matt. And this was the point where I figured out how to properly read the descriptions of the classes that are there, because it talked about it being zone 4 intervals, and then it sort of broke them down as 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. And I thought, okay, so what we're gonna do is like zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 3, zone 2, like a minute each, building up to 4. However, that wasn't what it was. For those of you who know power zones will know this. When they say you're doing like zone 4, it will mean like, okay, you're doing 2 minutes in zone 4 and then like a break, usually to zone 2. Or maybe it was even zone 1 we went to, and then 3 minutes at zone 4, and then 4 minutes at zone 4, and then 3 minutes at zone 4, and 2 minutes at zone 4. So I learned properly how to like read what the class is going to be. And I do appreciate how much they tell you, like this is what the class is going to be. You go in knowing exactly the length of the intervals, the kind of effort you're going to be putting in. So you could really plan what kind of workout you want to have if you were designing your own program. This one wasn't too bad. I mean, the zone 4 intervals are hard, but again, my thought, I'm gonna mention music a few times in here, is just Matt's choice of music is often not my choice of music, although it was the right beat for what we were doing, so that was good, but that was generally my thought on the first class of the week. The second class of the week was a 45-minute class with Dennis. And I have not really done that many 45-minute classes. In fact, the only one I believe that I've done before was Christine's Rent Ride, because I love the musical Rent. Now I have stacked classes together to make like, you know, 45 minutes on the bike total. But when you stack classes together, you tend to get those like cool downs and warm-ups from stacking the classes. So it's not quite as intense. So I was kind of worried going into this one, but I actually felt pretty like comfortable and hyped up by the end. We never went above a zone 3, if I remember properly. And I just enjoy Dennis so much, and I enjoy the music he puts on, and it makes me happy when he's singing along, and I just felt really hyped and happy through the whole thing. I think this was my favorite ride of week 2. There were 3 things that I really enjoyed that he said during the class. He talked at one point about training, and he talked about changing your mindset from diet and exercise to fueling and training yourself. And I think that would be, I mean, I'm not saying that I have made that shift in my thinking, but I think it would be a really cool shift to have, to sort of think of yourself as more of an athlete. So you are training, you are fueling your body, instead of like dieting, which is often sort of thought, it's a restrictive kind of thought about cutting out stuff. The idea of fueling your body, to me, you think more about what can I provide to make my body train better? You know, like protein, vegetables, fiber, you know, some good fats and carbohydrates. It's a shift that I'm not saying I've made that shift, but I really enjoyed thinking about that. The other thing was that I think this is one of these things where I realize again that Dennis and I are exactly the same age. He talked about sort of being your own, not being your own worst enemy, that's not it, but basically when you're training, you're just racing with yourself. But he referenced a Sesame Street book called The Monster at the End of the Book. And it's this book about Grover, and I had that book growing up. Like, it was just such a nostalgic memory for me, and it kind of came out of nowhere, and it was so sweet, and I appreciated that moment. It just had me smiling through the whole ride. And the other thing that Dennis mentioned that I really appreciated was he talked about everything being practice. So he cues you a lot to like sit up properly, shoulders back, you know, core engaged. And oftentimes when he does that, I need to do it because I am not in the right position. But he said, like, this is practice. So every time you catch yourself not doing it properly, you are practicing getting back into that position again. And you should just smile at the fact that you need to do it again, because that is what is going to build the muscles and build the muscle memory. So it was kind of, again, that shift of idea of, oh, I'm doing badly because every time he cues me, I'm not in the right position, to, hey, this is what's supposed to happen. You know, we know that you're in the wrong position, or whatever it might be. It's basically switching it from like sort of almost being a negative to like, yeah, of course, this happens. This is part of your training. This is part of your practice, that you're going to be like not in the right position and you get back into it again. So it's not a negative that we have to keep reminding you. It's all part of the practice. The next class for the week was a half-hour class, and it was with Olivia. I don't know how I feel about Olivia. I don't know how our music choices jive. I do know that after I took this class, I did a 10-minute cool down with her, and it was incredibly intense and difficult. It was like the hardest I did all day was in that cool down, so I'm not sure I'll be doing her outside of the Power Zone classes just yet. I think somebody in my comments at one point mentioned how Olivia is really intense in her classes. So she may be a little hard for me at this point outside of the Power Zone program. Because one of the things that I did notice is it seems like you always have sort of the same warm-up. You're in zone 1, you're doing like some spin-ups in the second song, and then you do a build. And what I noticed that Olivia did a little bit more than Dennis or Matt is she was cueing what your resistance should be in the warm-up, and I found there was a discrepancy between what she was saying the resistance should be and where my zones were. So because I am like very new, my FTP is very low, you know, she would say like, add some resistance, you should be at like above 30 now. And then she would do the spin ups and she would say like, you know, you shouldn't be above a zone 2 or zone 3 when you're doing these spin ups. But for me, at the resistance that she cued, I was like into zone 4 and like higher. And again, I think because I'm like a detailed and numbers person, it was kind of bugging me that she was cueing for resistance and for zones that didn't go together for me. And it just has to be a shift in my mind to know that like, okay, she may be cueing higher resistances. I just need to pay attention to the zones. So even though she may be saying like starting at 30 for these spin ups and then add a point of resistance every time, so by the end you might be at like 35, that for me, I shouldn't be there, because me doing like cadence over 110 at 35 resistance is going to put me into like zone 4 or zone 5 when I should only be in like maximum zone 3. I'm going to mention again about music, because a lot of the music wasn't really my thing, but she did play Lizzo and Queen about halfway through, and then I was like flying because I was just enjoying the music so much. And what I'm also finding in these rides, and I found because for her ride towards the end of that one, you were doing higher cadence work, I am really enjoying doing the sustained higher cadence part of the Power Zone training. And finally, the last class of the week was a 45-minute ride again, this time with Matt. I do find for Matt, I really enjoy him as a trainer because he has a lot of really good things to say. He's very encouraging. Again, our musical tastes don't always jive, but I did discover this time that, like, I mean, he did some Nirvana and stuff in there, which I really liked. He then did some more like hip hop stuff, which I don't really know, so it doesn't get me fired up. But he was playing sort of like some club EDM type music, and even though I didn't know the songs, I really like that music with a heavy beat. That gets me fired up, even if I don't actually know the song. So I appreciated that. I do find that he doesn't cue or ride on the beat as much as, like, say Dennis does. Like, you'll be doing this, you know, like pretty high beat song, and he'll be like, you know, you can be anywhere between 80 and 110. Well, like, but where's the beat at? Because I do like riding with the beat, and sometimes I do need to be cued on that a little bit. Anyway, it's just, I noticed that, like, Dennis is like super on the beat and even made like his songs change at the intervals, whereas Matt seems to be more about like ride the cadence that works for you rather than following the beat of the song. And I also noticed, and this is sort of a difference between Matt and Dennis, Matt does a lot of shout outs in his ride. And while that's super exciting if you're the person being shouted out, I find it sort of like background noise that both doesn't distract me from what I'm doing on the bike when I might want a bit of a distraction, but is also doesn't really provide me any kind of like cueing on the bike. I noticed that Dennis doesn't tend to do that as much. He'll do his shout outs like during the cool down at the end. So I don't mind it. I just found that Matt was doing a lot of it in this ride. But I got through the ride, I stayed in my zones the whole time, and I feel really accomplished when I end up getting through these rides. So I'm looking forward to the next week. I will mention, just because I found this during this week, I found a cool down that I really liked, a 5-minute cool down with Matt. I really do try to take cool down rides every time I ride. I do at least a 5-minute cool down, especially if it's a longer ride. If it's a shorter ride, I might do a 10-minute cool down, and then I always do a 5-minute stretch. There is a 5-minute cool down with Matt where it's just less than 30 resistance in zone 1 the entire time, and I find that to be perfect after these rides, because there are some cooldowns where they want you to start at like high resistance and like really difficult and then bring it down, but I am finding after these power zone rides I just want like a consistent zone 1 for like 5 minutes just to sort of cool everything down a little bit more. There is also a 5-minute stretch that I'm really enjoying. I think it's with Emma. I might have to go back and look. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen if I can find it. But I both enjoy the way she does sort of like around the world stretches. So you stretch everything on one side and then like reverse your way through those stretches with your other leg. But also she's playing Radiohead for the majority of it. Fake Plastic Trees, I think it is. And I just super love it. So I will put both of those, both the cool down that I like and the stretch that I like, just up on the screen. So maybe if you're looking for one, they might be something that you enjoy. That is it for my video today. I do hope these reviews of the Power Zone program week by week are helpful for you. I got some really supportive comments on the last video, so please continue to leave those supportive comments. I love reading them. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. That really helps me out. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you're interested in seeing sort of the other half of what I'm doing, which is around like my nutrition and also my like a weight loss journey, check out the other playlists or my other videos on my channel. Thanks so much, guys, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.